Just take a minute. Look around you. There's history being made. Has been. Will be. How can there not? Just something about those blue skies, high banks, and high speed, all coming together in one perfect race. And it'll be here sooner than you think.
Roll Tide and welcome to this Thursday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. I'm Roger Hoover, glad to welcome you to our studios as we get set for this matchup between Alabama and Texas A&M on Saturday. As we begin the show, we'll go through our headlines and everything that's coming up on the show, thanks to our friends at RJ Young. They're the official technology solutions provider of Crimson Drive. They've given us a smart board to go through each and everything that's coming up on the show today. First, we'll hear from the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban, with Coach's Checklist after he met with the media on Wednesday night following practice for the Tide. They'll be talking to Will Anderson Jr., the All-American, has some thoughts on the last performance against Arkansas and what's coming up this Saturday against Texas A&M. Speaking of previewing the A&M game, and we'll also preview tonight's Hey Coach and the Nick Saban Show. We'll be joined by Chris Stewart to get his thoughts on Alabama football. And then we'll talk to Brad Nessler, as he'll be on the play-by-play call for CBS coming up this Saturday. This is actually the second in a three-game stretch that Brad Nessler, Gary Danielson will be calling Alabama football. So great to catch up with Brad Nessler. And then one of the other play-by-play voices getting ready for Saturday is Andrew Monaco. He's the voice of the Texas A&M Aggies. He'll give us a detailed scouting report on A&M. Going through our other headlines, looking at Crimson Tide football as Alabama now number one once again in the nation. Great to see that this past week. And this Saturday home at 7 p.m. Our radio coverage will start at 4 o'clock. It's going to be a really special night coming up inside Bryant-Denny Stadium in a series that Alabama has dominated throughout the years, leading overall 11-3. And Alabama, not only ranked number one, but they're taking on a team that, kind of like last year, unranked and coming in off of a loss. Texas A&M 3-2, the two losses, including 1-1 in SEC play, a loss last week to Mississippi State, and then in week 2, one of the stunning upsets of the college football season at Kyle Field. It was Appalachian State defeating Texas A&M, but make no doubt about it, Jimbo Fisher has his team ready to go for this Saturday against the Crimson Tide. Team on campus that's been ready to go really all season long, the Alabama soccer team. They have won 7 straight matches, only one loss so far this year, and tonight they have another ranked matchup coming up at home against Ole Miss, 7 p.m. on SEC Network Plus. Alabama, highest ranking in school history once again. Now the Crimson Tide move up to number 4 in the nation, and then on Sunday they're going to be calling Baton Rouge at LSU at 1 p.m. for what will be a tough road matchup as always down on the Bayou, but we look forward to seeing West Hart's soccer team in action once again. And some other notes around Crimson Tide athletics. The volleyball team at Ole Miss coming up on Friday and Saturday after falling last time out against Kentucky. We saw Ryan White put together a great performance at the Arkansas meet this past weekend. So she was named the SEC Swimmer of the Week. And then as well, track and field, early cross-country honors rolling in for Victor Kiprop as well as Hilda. Great to see her earn SEC Freshman of the Week honors along with Victor not only being the SEC Athlete of the Week, but Kiprop was also the National Athlete of the Week for his great performance this past week. Well, of course, we are getting set for the Crimson Tide and the Texas A&M Aggies in football. And head coach Nick Saban has been getting his team ready throughout a tough week of practice here in Tuscaloosa. Here's what he had to say after Wednesday's practice with Coach's Checklist.
Well, I think this time of year, with these kinds of challenges coming up, it's so important, and I talked about it last week, about maintaining intensity, for the entire game. And I think the important thing about that is you have to do it in practice. If you can do it in practice, even when you get tired, even when you don't feel like grinding on, it gets easier to do it in the game because you're creating a mindset basically to, enough is never enough. So you want to keep on working to, try to improve and then get yourself ready to learn from what you did today and do it again tomorrow so that you can keep making progress. We're playing a very good team this week. It has a lot of good players. They're very well coached. So, this is going to be a very challenging game for us. So we're working on it. I think the players have responded, really well to what he's had to do. And, I think, what we try to get our guys to do is focus on doing your job. And if everybody does their job, we're going to have a chance to be successful. And, it doesn't really matter who's in there playing. I got to do my job. And when I get the opportunity to do it, I got to be prepared to do it. And go do it well. And sometimes, that's harder for guys to do who aren't starters. But I think it's a real test of your character if you can do it, so you can take advantage of the opportunity when it comes, which I thought Jalen did a pretty good job of last week, and hopefully we can build on that if he has to play this week. I think that in the last game, they showed signs of that. They showed signs of it, at times throughout the year. I just think, your whole body of work is based on, consistency and performance. That's what defines success. So, that's what we got to keep working on with them. But I do think we're making progress, and I do think that this last game was probably the best that they've been all year.
Crimson Drive is driven by NASCAR. Don't miss out on your chance to experience the Great American Race. Witness the stars of NASCAR leave it all on the track in the hopes of becoming the winner of the 65th annual Daytona 500. Purchase your tickets today at DaytonaInternationalSpeedway.com. Well, we've heard from the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban. Now it's time to talk to one of the leaders of the Alabama defense. Will Anderson Jr. had a great performance against Arkansas, and now he's ready for Saturday against Texas A&M. Alabama's 5-0 on the season. How'd you feel about your performance at Arkansas, Will?
I think we did a couple of good things really good. We kind of lost our intensity around going into halftime at the third quarter, but I think we pulled it back together in the fourth quarter. But overall, as a team, I think we played really great. We showed great intensity, and we showed how good we can play when we all be on the same page and play together.
Was it just everyone doing their jobs in the fourth quarter, or did anything really change going from the third to the fourth?
I think it was everybody just locked in, doing their job, getting the calls, executing what Coach Pete called, and everybody be on the same page and having fun and flying around.
And, of course, you were able to fly around the backfield. How about Dallas Turner as well, getting some tackles for a loss?
Yeah, Dallas is a great competitor. He works hard every day. He comes to practice with the edge on his shoulder that, he's going to get better. He's going to get 1% better each day, and he's just showing on the tape and showing on the field, and we're so thankful to have him on our team. Certainly are.
Also thankful to have Jalen Milroe, who finished the last game at quarterback. You've practiced against him a lot. What kind of competitor is he?
He's a big competitor. He can run, he can pass. He did a really good job of, going into the game and, stepping up when we needed him to do. He didn't get nervous or any of that. He stepped up big time for us, and we're appreciative of him as well, and he did a really good job.
Is he tough to tackle?
Yeah, he is. He got great feet, and he can move really well.
He certainly can. And, of course, he came in for Bryce. And I know Bryce was on the sideline in the second half as well, still being a leader even if he wasn't on the field, right?
Yes, of course. Bryce, he does a great job. But to see the leadership from Bryce, cheering the offense on, cheering Milroe on, giving him culture points and everything like that, it just shows the type of person Bryce is, and we're thankful to have Bryce as well.
Now you're getting ready to be at home to take on Texas A&M, and this is another physical football team you have coming Saturday.
Yeah, most definitely. This is part of the stretch that we're going to go on. Texas A&M is a really good team, have a really good quarterback, good offensive line, a great offensive scheme they have, and, it's going to be a great challenge for us.
We know you love playing at Bryant-Denny Stadium. That's how we typically end these interviews, but how about under the lights? Is there a special kind of energy the crowd feeds you those nights?
Yeah, it is. You don't take none of those moments for granted. The fans out there cheering for us with the lights and everything like that, it just adds more momentum for us.
Will, thank you for joining us. Roll Tide.
Thank you. Roll Tide.
We look forward to Will Anderson Jr. making more big plays this upcoming Saturday against Texas A&M, and the man for us on the Crimson Tide Sports Network calling it on the radio, filling in for Eli Gold, will be Chris Stewart. He's also hosting Hey Coach and the Nick Saban Show, and we always catch up with Chris on our Thursday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR, to see what's coming up not only Saturday at Bryant-Denny Stadium, but also tonight at Baumhower's Victory Grill in Tuscaloosa. Chris, Roll Tide. Here we are, Week 6, and the Crimson Tide, a perfect 5-0.
5-0, and not that it matters a ton right now, but number one is still a better place to be than not, and fun to see that. Of course, that's a deal for the fans by and large. It won't change anything inside the Malmore Athletic Complex and the football offices, but it is always exciting for the fans when the Tide's on top.
Let's go back to Saturday for a moment in Fayetteville. What a great start, first of all, for the Crimson Tide. But after Arkansas had its good third quarter, how impressed were you by the way Alabama finished that game, both on offense and defense?
Extremely so. Was just talking with somebody about the fact that you go back to the start of that fourth quarter. Not only has it gone from 28-0 to now 28-23, and those fans, a record crowd, are making as much noise as they are. You have your second string quarterback, and oh, by the way, it's 3rd and 15. And then Jalen Milroe takes off and goes, I guess, 77 yards and almost got into the end zone and managed to, 2 plays later, Alabama does score. it was so nice to see them respond in a way. It was great to see them start off the way they did. And I will put with the start the fact that after Bryce went out with the score of 14-0, you do get it to 28-0 with Jalen coming in and engineering the offense. And then to go from there and weathering the third quarter into the second quarter, and the third quarter collective storm that we got from Arkansas. That was a lot of fun to see that team respond in that manner in the fourth.
Speaking of Jalen Milroe, we've gotten to see him this season, a little bit last year, playing in some second halves of ball games at Bryant-Denny Stadium as he tries to get some experience. But how about him being thrown in the fire and playing as well as he did on the road at Arkansas with the first team?
Yeah, Roger, just like we talked about during the game broadcast on Saturday together, the fact that he came in when it was on the line. It's a very different, it's great to get experience anytime for a young quarterback. But to do it when you know the outcome is in the balance, and he knew that going in 14-0, he knew the likelihood was very strong that he was going to be the guy the rest of the way, and to manage that moment as well as he did, and then to basically validate it even more with what he did on that 3rd and 15 play and the rest of the way. Extremely impressed by him and how that offense looked with him at the helm. Now, look, we all hope Bryce is healthy and back and is the guy, but I don't think anybody's uncomfortable if it's number 4 running the offense at quarterback.
Speaking of being calm under pressure all season long, fans have enjoyed the booth cam highlights that we've inside social media accounts. Have you kept your head about you? Obviously excited, big plays for the Crimson Tide, but even if you say you have the boss dancing behind you going back and forth, how much fun has it been to look back at some of those big moments and see all the chaos that's going on around you?
Was it Robert Frost and who said, if you can keep your head while those about you are losing theirs? Thankfully, I can't see most of that going on. I'm like a good quarterback in the pocket. I can feel the pressure around me, but I'm trying to stay calm in the pocket. But the other luxury is we love our boss. Jim is fantastic. But when you know you can't possibly show any level of emotion more than what he does, in all seriousness, it does make it a lot of fun. And I had somebody say something to me about standing up during 1 or 2 of those touchdown runs. Full disclosure, it wasn't because of the excitement of the moment. As you well know, the photo deck is positioned directly in front of our broadcast booth. And inside the 10-yard line, or my line of sight for the 10-yard line, was the CBS camera, which obstructed my view on that sideline right where Jalen was trying to tightrope it and get in. I had to stand up in order to see. And the same thing on, I think, Jameer's first touchdown run as well, or maybe it was JoJo Earl's catch, one of those. It's nice when you got so many big plays, you can't remember which was which. But it was truly a matter of standing up, not just the excitement of the moment, but in order to see so I could describe it properly or as best I could to the audience. All the other goofy stuff you see, though, that's just because we go nuts during the game and having a good time.
And we're excited about another Alabama win. So now we're getting ready for Saturday, the Crimson Tide and the Texas A&M Aggies. And also coming up Thursday night, Hey Coach and the Nick Saban Show. What's coming up for us at Baumhauer's?
Well, somebody you know well, Christy Curry, the coach of the women's team, who had a phenomenal year on the recruiting trail and excited about the upcoming season. We'll be talking with Coach Curry, and then Andy Staples, well-respected national writer from The Athletic, who I think was with Sports Illustrated and SI.com for a number of years before making that transition to The Athletic, is going to be in town, and he'll be the media guest, and look forward to visiting with him, in addition to the guy that's in charge of the football program as well.
Well, we're certainly looking forward to that. And Saturday, again, Texas A&M 3-2 on the season. We saw last year the Aggies go into that matchup with a loss, ended up upsetting Alabama in College Station. So we know that despite what's going on with A&M at this point, Texas A&M will give Alabama a really tough challenge on Saturday.
You get it. you always get everybody else's best, and fully expect A&M to deliver that. I look forward to the atmosphere in the stadium. I think that'll be very entertaining from an Alabama perspective as well.
We've been waiting on October 8th, and it's almost here. Chris Stewart, thank you so much for joining us. Have fun with Coach Saban at the restaurant coming up, and also on Saturday. Roll Tide.
Thank you, Roger. Roll Tide.
Just take a minute. Look around you. There's history being made. Has been, will be, and it'll be here sooner than you think.
As we keep getting ready for Alabama against Texas A&M on Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR, we'll continue our tour of the press box. We just heard from Chris Stewart. We'll hear from the voice of the Aggies in a moment, Andrew Monaco. But up next is Brad Nessler of CBS. He's going to be very busy seeing the Crimson Tide over the month of October, and he joins us now to preview this matchup between the Crimson Tide and the Aggies. On the call once again for Alabama against Texas A&M after just seeing the Crimson Tide against Arkansas, and he'll also be calling Alabama-Tennessee coming up. So, Brad, a lot of Crimson Tide football coming up for you. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going good, Roger. How you doing?
Doing really well. It's an exciting part of the season as you got to call, of course, Alabama's win against Arkansas. And just what impressed you the most about Alabama this past Saturday?
Well, I think the fact that they got in a sticky situation in the third quarter and, got threatened a little bit, made a couple of mistakes. The game got close, and yet they were able to turn around and get 2 quick touchdowns and really put things out of hand. And obviously having a backup quarterback come in and fill in as well as Jalen did for Bryce. So I think that was pretty impressive. The defense continues to impress me. I think they're kind of at full strength right now. I don't know about Brian Branch, but they kind of look like the Alabama defenses of old. So all in all, I think if they get Bryce Young back and develop some of the young receivers, I think they're going to be pretty good. Already are pretty good. I'm kidding myself.
Well, going into a broadcast, of course, you're ready to go on all the different players on both rosters, and also your preparation really comes through when you do see a situation like we saw Saturday. Bryce Young gets injured, Jalen Milroe comes in. Just what did you learn about Milroe going into the ball game, and just how impressed were you with the way he played?
I'll be honest with you. You prepare a little bit and you talk to the coordinators or the head coach about what if, and you're always crossing your fingers that doesn't happen. And so you get to that situation and you kind of start going to your backup material and you're going, well, wait a minute, I got to figure this out. I know I did research on this guy, but I was preparing for the Heisman Trophy winner. Let's be honest. I knew that he was a great quarterback, Gatorade Player of the Year, and our Under Armour Player of the Year. And I knew he was a good runner, and he was in that game. I think it leaves something to be desired as far as the passing game, but he doesn't get the kind of reps Bryce Young does, and there's only one Bryce Young out there, like Nick Saban said. So, it's going to be a different ball game when he comes in, and you just adjust on the fly.
And then how about the play of Jahmyr Gibbs? We know he's been a great pass-catching option, even out of the backfield for Alabama this year, but what did you see on some of his long runs in the fourth quarter?
I'm telling you, man, I think he's going to be, if they play into the college football playoff, let's say they play 15 games, I think he could be a 1,000 guy. There's not many of those around. I think he could catch 1,000 yards worth of passes and rush for 1,000. I was impressed with him his time at Georgia Tech. Got to see a lot of highlights because I live in Atlanta. He was their offense. They didn't have much else. And I thought he'd be a superstar when he got to Alabama. I certainly didn't change my mind the other day against Arkansas. I guess what I was maybe a little bit shocked about is I knew he was fast, but I didn't know he was that fast, and I didn't know he was quite that decisive on his cuts. I mean, he hits the hole, and it's over. And I called a couple of plays that I heard some people in the truck afterwards said, man, he called touchdown when there was a lot of green in front of him. I said, I don't care. You can tell speed on speed, and I don't care what kind of angle. And I think Chris probably did the same thing, calling it with the Alabama radio network. You just have that feel. You get out there, and I knew he was gone. And, I heard Gary whispering to one of the guys in the booth, hey, he called that one pretty fast, didn't he? So I called both of them pretty fast.
We certainly like that. Would love to see that continue coming up this week for Alabama against Texas A&M. And Brad, so far in your research of the Aggies, what have you learned about Jimbo Fisher's team?
Well, underachieving right now, but they got quarterback issues. They just can't seem to get happy. Haynes King started the season, had one good game. He's had interception problems. Max Johnson came in, won a couple big games for him, and kept him in the top 15, but he's got fumbling problems and he's got a bad thumb. And, Connor Wigman hasn't been used yet, the freshman that was a 5-star kind of guy. So they got issues there. They don't have an Anias Smith, which is one of their biggest weapons. The biggest thing they have going for them is Devon A-Chain right now, and he's going to have something like a 300-yard game between receiving, rushing, and returns for them to have a chance offensively. I think they just made too many mistakes so far.
Even though it's a painful memory for Alabama fans, the game last year in College Station, just for you getting to call that win against Texas A&M against Alabama, was that one of the more memorable games you've called in your time at CBS?
It was one of the more memorable ones last year, that's for sure. Wasn't expecting that. They were kind of in the same situation they're in right now, unranked, at home, which is a big difference for them. But, there was guys that had the game of their lives in that one, including Zach Calzado, and he's not even playing for Auburn and he's hurt. So it was one of those kind of magical, everything fell into place for him type of games. Comes down to a kick at the end. Probably shouldn't even have gotten to that point, and it's I don't want to say it's fun to call those kind of games, but it is, especially when it's on a home field and it's an upset. So I don't anticipate it being quite like that, and certainly not 41-38. If Texas A&M scores 41 points on Alabama this week, I might have a heart attack in the booth, and then you got a real story. You'll have to come from the booth next to me to save me.
All right, definitely can do that. Well, Brad, we look forward to seeing you not only in Tuscaloosa this Saturday, but in Knoxville next week as well, calling Crimson Tide football. Just thank you so much for your time with us here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. All the best.
You got it, Roger. See you this weekend, man.
Always love catching up with Brad Nessler. Again, he will be on CBS coming up this Saturday for the Crimson Tide and Texas A&M, as well as next week when Alabama makes the trip to Knoxville to take on Tennessee. But this week's opponent is Texas A&M, and it's time to get the scouting report on the Aggies from the voice of Texas A&M, Andrew Monaco. And we have a lot to discuss, not just the 3-2 start that we've seen for the Aggies this season, but also who's going to play quarterback, who can step up on defense. Andrew Monaco does his best to try and answer those questions for us on today's Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. And we are excited for this matchup. We've been talking about this game a lot, it feels like, all year long. Andrew, it's great to see you. How's everything going?
It is wonderful to see you as well, Roger. Yeah, we have. It was one that you kind of circle when the schedule comes out, right? But it's almost the first game you look for when the schedule gets released. So, yeah, there's an awful lot of anticipation. Can I say for a number of reasons because of the offseason as well? But I think it's become one of the special matchups in the SEC West, that's for sure.
Well, the Crimson Tide 5-0, the Aggies 3-2. If you could just kind of take us week by week, the journey that this Texas A&M team has been on so far this year.
Yeah, Sam Houston, week number 1 is a shutout in a game that was delayed by lightning. So it was almost like a tale of two halves, but really showed that one of the strengths of this team was going to be the defense. And then the shocker the next week against App State in a game in which you're seeing a trend that the Aggies left an awful lot of yards and points out there on the field. And I'd love to say ran out of time, but I think Appalachian State just took that time from them and win 17-14. And then it becomes, okay, who are your leaders? Jimbo Fisher said something I thought during the week, and one of the last things that he said during the walkthrough on Friday was, look, you have a chance to change the narrative. The best thing that happens right now is you get to play the number 13 team in the country at home on Saturday night. And they responded well. Once again, the defense was stellar, giving up just 9 points. 5 field goal attempts, 3 were made, 1 was blocked, 1 was missed. Oh, we're going to talk about missed field goals. How about Arkansas last week or the week before that? In a Southwest Classic that we always play in Arlington, and those days are now numbered. We're going to go back on campus soon. The other thing that jumps out at me is Jimbo says that college football is so reliant on momentum. Games are influenced by momentum. And in that game, it really was. Arkansas had a chance to go up big, fumble recovery for a touchdown. Aggies score before the half. They score the first time. Actually, they're down 14-0, have a chance to be buried by Arkansas. And then all of a sudden, they score 23 unanswered and with a chance to get more, and they leave those points on the board. And then Arkansas driving in the field goal hits the uprights there at AT&T Stadium. And then last week, Mississippi State chanted a couple of interceptions early in that game. And what's interesting, Roger, from a secondary that has said, look, we have got to get more turnovers, and they were in the right place, right time, but they came up empty. They did not get those interceptions, and then a fumble. running it right down Mississippi State. Devon chain run after run after run. The offensive line seemed to really be coming together. And then the fumble changed everything. And instead of stopping Mississippi State like they had in the first couple of drives, stalling out around midfield, the 48-yard line, they go 94 yards, get the first score, and then the second, and it's 14-0. And then the Aggies can't do anything. At the end of the first half, they open up with a drive, but instead of 7, they get 3. They force a turnover at the 25, and then the field goal is blocked, and you could just see that momentum. And it reminded me of games past against Mississippi State. It always seems the team that has the lead in that game has the momentum. And a couple of years ago in that stadium, the Aggies had that. And last year at Kyle Field, Mississippi State had that. The Aggies' comeback fell short. It's been disappointing because yards are being left out there. Opportunities are being left out there. When will it come together? I don't know. And you can't expect past to be prologue just because the Aggies beat Alabama last year. If you don't duplicate what you did last year, and that was a practice coming together, that was Zach Calzada's best practice. But even then, that is no guarantee. But that's one of the learning things is this team is learning how important Monday through Friday is to their performances on Saturday.
What's the quarterback situation look like getting ready for Saturday in Tuscaloosa?
Haynes King is running with the ones. Connor Wigman's behind him, and we'll see about Max Johnson and his hand as we get later into the week. But in the early part of this week, it will be Haynes and it will be Connor Wigman. So really interesting, I think, the dynamic. I always looked at that quarterback room as a coach's son. That's Haynes King. John King coached it at Longview, Tyler Longview for the longest time. Max Johnson being Brad Johnson's son and who played it at LSU, and Connor, who's the terrific quarterback from Bridgeland here in Texas. And I always looked about how are they going to mesh with one another, make each other better, things like that. What I think really helped was Haynes was the starter for the first 2 weeks, and Max was ready when his time came. His time came against Miami, against Arkansas. And then Haynes, how was he going to handle being number 2? Again, when you have that kind of makeup of the kind of young men that they are, he was ready. As you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. That backup quarterback at a moment's notice, you're one play away from being in there. And the Jimbo Fisher line is don't wait to play, prepare to play. And I think both these quarterbacks, Max Johnson and Haynes King, were prepared to be number 1, but I also think they were prepared to be that number 2 quarterback who could go in at any time.
And regardless of who's playing quarterback for the Aggies, just offensively, what are some things Texas A&M needs to keep working on to be able to move the football and ultimately get the ball in the end zone?
They need to be able to run, and that offensive line, when they fell behind to Mississippi State, you could not give to Devon Chain, but it's back-to-back games of over 100 yards for Devon. You really miss Anias Smith. He's out for the season with the leg injury. And the versatility of Anias, because he can be in the backfield, he can be in the slot, he's your punt returner, and very much a leader. Has been at every practice. He's even signaling plays just to make sure that they get in, but he's there with the team, and he'll be on the sideline, which will help. But you want Sub-Zero to be out there on the field. But that line has got to be able to, Jimbo Fisher offense is always going to be balanced. So can you run? And they were doing it well, but you had to abandon it because you had to pass, trying to come from behind. But that was a good sign. I think you're still going to see some 2-back, though, even though it's not with Anias Smith. And you'll see Devon Chain as well split out as a wide receiver. Moose Muhammad is the one who has taken over Anias Smith's spot in the slot. If the name is familiar, yes, he is the son of Moose and Muhammad, Carolina Panthers wide receiver. He's the one struggled against Arkansas and really was the best receiver, I thought, against Mississippi State. But then who else steps up? That becomes the key. And if that line is going to open holes for the running backs, they've got to protect Haynes King. You have got to give him time. And that's one thing I don't think Haynes had in the first couple of weeks, but Max Johnson had a little bit more. So you're seeing that offensive line come together a little bit.
Defensively, who are the Aggies that our fans need to know about getting ready for Saturday?
Edgerrin Cooper, linebacker, will be 45, will be all over the field. The Aggies do not have Andre White Jr., so in his place at linebacker is Chris Russell Jr., and he has had a couple of double-figure tackle games. Thought he was outstanding against Arkansas. He forced the fumble of KJ Jefferson. Really, the back end is the strength. Damani Richardson at safety, along with Jordan Gilbert. Now, Damani coming back for one more year, I thought was huge. Jordan Gilbert last year pressed into duty as a safety as a freshman, now as a sophomore. I can say the same thing about Tyreek Chappelle on one of the corners. We're going to see what's up with Jalen Jones right now. He has been out in the early part of this week. He got injured against Mississippi State. Brian George is another one. And then they call on Denver Harris as well. Who's Denver Harris, a true freshman who took over in that cornerback spot. You could say a little bit baptism by fire, but Jimbo's not going to throw them out there to see if they can play. They're going to be ready to play. It's what they've done on the practice field. I've really been impressed with this defensive line, though, because for what this team lost in a Michael Clemens, who's now with the Jets, and a DeMarvin Leal, who's now with the Steelers, and Tyree Johnson, all that experience, Jaden Peavy as well. These young guys have really, really done well. And the two Shamars, Shamar Turner and Shamar Stewart. I always like doing that because I figure I've got a 2 in 11 chance of getting it right and who made the tackle. And they're number 4 and number 5. Stewart wears 4 and Turner wears 5. Anthony Lucas, LT Overton. Lucas, I believe, is 17 years old and he's playing. LT Overton, I think, just turned 18. And they're getting significant reps. Walter Nolan is one of their defensive linemen, freshmen. And then you add in Isaiah Rakes. And I'm thinking we might get McKinley Jackson back. I think would be a huge addition to that D-line. McKinley is kind of that bridge from Bobby Brown and Justin Matabike to now this D-line. And even though he hasn't been there, it's an elbow, and that's tricky, the elbow injury. And you'll see them rotate a lot of that D-line. And as you know, that front 3 or front 4, if they can get some kind of pressure. Now, the sacks haven't been there, but if they can get that kind of pressure, you know that front 4 helps the back 7.
I would know it's early in the week as we record this interview, but just what's been the mood around the football complex and the messaging from Coach Fisher trying to get his guys ready to go? Because it was similar circumstances last year, coming off the loss, going into the Alabama game. We saw one of the best moments for A&M in recent history. So what's been the mood? What's been the messaging from Coach Fisher getting ready for this game?
Seize the opportunity. This is the opportunity that is given you. And he's a big one, Roger, on, look, don't focus on what the scoreboard's going to say and miss what happens in between. Win your space, win it more often than your opponent. Scoreboard's going to say what you say, but that has to be the focus on that very next snap. This team knows that it's left, as I said before, points and yards on that field. They feel like they've missed these opportunities. When does that come together? Their feeling is, okay, it's going to come together this week. I thought the leadership was tested after App State, and then it was tested not just in the beginning of that week, but also at the end of that week. Because if you remember, there were 4 freshmen who missed curfew, and it was the leadership, the unity council of this team said, you know what, they're not playing this game. I think that leadership gets tested again to say, hey, don't be down. We're right there. Let's make this come together. And again, the repeat performance of not just the week leading up to the last game against Alabama, but then what did you do against South Carolina that next week? And then against Auburn when Auburn came in? And then what did you do? I hearken back to that Orange Bowl year where they lost to Alabama, and Alabama handled Texas A&M 2 years ago. And the first thing that happened on the practice fields on Monday was Buddy Johnson got that entire defense around him, and he said, look, if you want to get better, right here. If you don't, there's the door. No hard feelings. And to me, that preparation changed. I'm interested to see if I see that from this team and that leadership say, hey, we've got this. Trust is a big word. Trust your teammate. But Roger, you also have to trust who's looking back at you in that mirror. Are you giving absolutely everything? Are you doing what you're doing best? That's what I think. And I want to see them play with some confidence once again. I don't want to hear, and I heard this early in the week, and I won't say the player, I don't want to hear this shock the world. This is Texas A&M now. I want to see a little swagger from them. I think they have to realize, like I asked Jimbo, does this team know how good they are? They're not there yet. The swagger, what I mean is that confidence that I can make that play. Don't doubt yourself. Be perfect in practice and then just trust yourself after you've created that habit. And that's what Max Wright, the tight end, was saying a little bit. He said, you know what? We have got to, what's the old Navy SEAL line? You sink to the level of your preparation. Be prepared so much that becomes the habit. You are your habit in those big moments.
We've been waiting all year for October 8th, and it is finally here. The Crimson Tide and the Aggies under the lights at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Andrew Monaco, the voice of Texas A&M, just thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to Saturday and having you in Tuscaloosa. Thank you.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Andrew Monaco, he'll be in the booth right next to us tomorrow night, or I guess Saturday night, as Alabama plays Texas A&M. We're ready for kickoff already here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network because we have a very busy weekend ahead, and it is time for the Wickles Weekend Update that's brought to you by Wickles Pickles. They are wickedly delicious, proud sponsor of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Let's see what's coming up on the network even later tonight. Later tonight, we will have Hey Coach and the Nick Saban Show from Baumhower's Victory Grill in Tuscaloosa. We'll have that streaming live on, of course, all the Crimson Tide Sports Network social media channels as well as Alabama Athletics. So we look forward to seeing Coach Saban along with Christy Curry and Andy Staples join Chris Stewart at Baumhower's. Tomorrow, we'll have a little bit of everything from the week of programming we've had on the network so far this week with This Week on the Crimson Tide Sports Network podcast, available on the Varsity Network app and wherever you get your podcast. And that'll get you ready for Saturday, 7 o'clock start time, Alabama against Texas A&M. Of course, a 7 o'clock kick. That means our coverage on the radio begins at 4 o'clock this upcoming Saturday from Bryant-Denny Stadium. Sunday, we'll have some television for you, the Nick Saban television show, as well as Tide TV this week. And then on Monday night, we'll talk about everything from the A&M game, plus look ahead to Tennessee with Crimson Tide Rewind from Baumhower's in Vestavia Hills. Again, that's coming up Monday night, 6 p.m. here on the network. Crimson Drive is driven by NASCAR, and we want you to be there for the 65th anniversary of the Daytona 500 on February 19th, 2023. Witness history in the making and purchase your tickets today at DaytonaInternationalSpeedway.com. That is going to wrap up this edition of Crimson Drive driven by NASCAR. And before we say goodbye on this Thursday afternoon, I wanted to tell you about something really cool that's coming up on Saturday before Alabama plays Texas A&M. There will be a flyover pregame. Now, normally this is timed out to be when the national anthem is played, but we will have our Bama Salute flyover a little earlier in the night. So with 45 minutes still left to go on the pregame clock, approximately 6:25, you want to make sure you're in your seats at Bryant-Denny Stadium. And as a quick reminder, make sure you download your tickets and parking passes now, so that'll make your game day experience much better on Saturday. But again, 45 minutes left on the pregame clock. Around 6:25 on Saturday, we will have the flyover. It's members of the Air Combat Command 391 1st Fighter Squadron out of Mountain Home, and so Mountain Home Air Force Base in Idaho. So they're making the trip to Tuscaloosa, and they're bringing flying for F-15E Strike Eagles. I haven't talked too much about some of our flyovers this year, obviously, but those Flying 4 Strike Eagles are coming up as they're going to be flying from south to north over Bryant-Denny Stadium, and then the crew will be recognized on the field at Bryant-Denny coming up in the third quarter. So a great experience, a great flyovers coming up again a little earlier than normal. Be in your seats at 6:25 Central on Saturday to make sure you see this outstanding flyover that we will have before Alabama against Texas A&M. Got to thank a lot of people that made this show successful today, including Will Anderson, along with Chris Stewart, Brad Nessler, and Andrew Monaco. Thanks to our video producer, Ethan Caravan, for putting this show together. For everybody with Crimson Tide Sports Network, this is Roger Hoover saying thank you for watching on this Thursday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. We'll see you Saturday at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Roll Tide, everyone.